The Ragin Cajuns received votes in the AP Top 25, so we thought. I'll explain right here on Ragin Rundown. What's good, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome into another episode of Ragin Rundown. All Cajuns all the time. I'm your guy, Jamarcus Fitzpatrick, but you know you can always call me Fitz. And in today's episode, we'll be talking about something that almost happened. So the Associated Press released their preseason poll on Monday, August the 17th, and it was as follows. Your number one team was Ohio State, followed by Oregon, Georgia, Notre Dame, Texas, Indiana, Miami, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, LSU, Texas Tech, Alabama, BYU, USC, a team that UL will play this season, Michigan, Washington, Penn State, SMU, Tennessee, Utah, Iowa, Houston, Louisville, and Missouri, a team that UL played last year. Others receiving votes: Clemson, Florida, Boise State, Arizona, TCU, Navy, South Carolina, Illinois, Oklahoma State, Vanderbilt, Pittsburgh, Virginia Tech, Minnesota, UNLV, New Mexico, Georgia Tech, Louisiana, James Madison with 3, Auburn with 3, Memphis with 2, California with 2, Liberty, Western Michigan, Tulane, and Virginia all received 1 AP vote. So initially, because I'm a sports reporter and I cover predominantly everything in South Louisiana, I primarily cover the Cajuns for my TV job at KTC, but I also talk about LSU. So I'm looking at this poll and I look at the top 25 and I'm like, hey, LSU is ranked 11th. But then I see an article on Crescent City Sports saying that Tulane and Louisiana are also receiving votes. So now I'm like, okay, cool. That's awesome. Like, that's great, right? And so Coach Des had his media availability on Tuesday, in which we have the opportunity to talk with him in the midst of camp. Normally, it's a 1 weeker type of thing, but during fall camp, we have multiple opportunities to talk with him. And so before I knew that there was an error, and we'll get to that in just a second, I asked him, what did it feel like to get that little bit of recognition? And here was his answer.
You know, it's always those things where it's like, you know, I don't put a whole lot of stock in anything preseason. I mean, I think whether it's really good or it's really bad, I mean, none of it really affects what you do. You know, you talk about blocking out noise and you talk about all these things, but I mean, our players hear it. It's in their face all the time. You know, what you hope is that it motivates them, you know, to say, hey, like, you know, maybe we're closer than maybe what people think. But at the end of the day, you got to go play the games. And I mean, that's the thing to me with all of it is, you know, whether they pick you last or they pick you first, none of it has anything to do with what's actually going to happen. And college football today, I think the hardest thing in the world is to have a preseason poll. I mean, I'm talking about conference or nationally, like that's the hardest thing in the world to do because, you know, there's so many factors that go into it. I mean, and even teams that, you know, and there are some teams, right, that they do a really good job in the portal. And they're able to go get, you know, unique players that have produced. You still have to put all that together, and you still have to create chemistry and do something with. So I think, you know, I think that stuff that, you know, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's nice to think that people, you know, give you some respect in that sense. But I mean, at the end of the, at the end of the year is where you want to be there. So for us, we have a lot of work to do to be in that talk at the end of the year. We're not a top 25 team right now. We have a lot of work to do to get there. So for us, it's got to be about, you know, today and about the practice today and trying to get better.
Plenty that Coach Des talked about there in that soundbite, about a minute 46 soundbite. I wanted to play the entire clip out for you, but let's clear up what actually ended up happening with the error. So on the poll, it looked like Louisiana received 4 votes, and so it's great. But what turns out that happened is that Louisville, who was ranked 24th in the poll, actually was the one that was supposed to receive those votes. So I'm assuming whoever the AP voters were put down UL and Louisville goes by U of L. So it didn't actually happen. It wasn't actually real, which to some it may be disappointing. But as you heard there from head coach Michael Desormeaux, he feels as though it's something that they don't necessarily look at as a slight, or they don't look at it as anything that is going to make or break their season. It's simply something else there on the tab. And so initially, when I saw that they were receiving votes, I was like, this is an episode that I need to talk about. And once it came out, I was like, well, maybe this is something I don't need to talk about. But then it got me to thinking, what would it actually take for Louisiana to legitimately be in that conversation? Hence why I'm recording this episode now. And as you heard there from Coach Dez in the quotes, he didn't celebrate it. He didn't say that we finally got respect or we're back on top. He said, we're not there yet. He said, we are not a top 25 team. We have a lot of work to do in order to get there. And we need to focus on what it takes to get to that point, which he's right. Desormeaux says that they have to continue to keep that laser-like focus and that they have to lean into that workman's mentality. And so now it poses the obvious question, what is it that it would take for Louisiana to be ranked? And there are several things that factor into why they weren't ranked, right? They've been competitive over the years. They've won championships. They've produced NFL players, and they've made it to bowl games. But what we haven't seen consistently in these past few years is being able to push themselves into that top 25 conversation. And obviously, as a group of 5 program, you either have to go 11-1 or 12-0 in the regular season to even crack the top 25, because it's always loaded with Power 4 programs, as you heard what I rattled off in the preseason top 25. And that's the difference. You know, being competitive gets you the respect inside your conference, but winning at a high level against big time games and big time opponents is what gets you national recognitions. So the Cajuns have been knocking on that door. We saw them beat Wake Forest a couple of years ago back in 2024. But they just haven't kicked it down just yet. And that's what 2026 is going to really be about. So the national respect gap is a big difference, right? What's interesting heading into the season is that in the preseason, the coaches said that Louisiana would finish second in the West. High respect. Phil Steele says that he believes the Cajuns would win the Sun Belt West. And on top of that, he placed 11 Cajuns on the preseason all Sun Belt team. We talked about that before. That includes guys like Sheldon Sampson, who's recovering from injury, Brent Gordon Jr., who I did a story on today at KETC, and I will probably be doing a podcast episode breaking it down further. Lunch Winfield, Cooper Fordham, George Jackson, Fitzgerald West, Maureen Iliam, Jacorian Norris, Caden Jensen, Darrell Smith, Zay Alexander. All of these guys were mentioned among the preseason Sun Belt team that Phil Steele selected. So clearly it's seen that some national media is seeing the talent that's on this roster. But the question is whether Louisiana can turn that talent into wins. And so I'm going to talk about what it's going to take for the Cajuns to really lay out a path to potentially being ranked at the end of the season. I'll discuss it all when we return here on Ragin Rundown. Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Ragin Rundown. We're going to get back into the action in just a second. But before we do, if you are tuning into this episode on YouTube, thank you so much. Please like this video, share it, and leave a comment down below. But most importantly, make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you're listening, please follow the podcast feed, rate the show, and leave us a review, because that's going to help us get in front of more Ragin Cajun fans just like yourself. So Louisiana has been viewed differently when it comes to how they look in the Sun Belt. Like I talked about before we went to break, the Sun Belt put them in position to be second. The Sun Belt coaches, that is, they received a first place vote and 75 points. Behind them, it was Troy. Troy was the team that represented the West in the Sun Belt championship game last season. So even within the conference, Louisiana isn't considered an overwhelming favorite, but they're somebody that's been respected. And that matters because this division is going to give Louisiana plenty of opportunities to change that perception. Troy, like I said, played in the conference championship. Arkansas State was right on the cusp of potentially sending Louisiana out of bowl contention last season. So if you take care of the teams that you're supposed to beat in the West, if you beat those teams, that is what ultimately gives you that opportunity. If you win your division first, and then if you're able to win your conference, that is what ultimately puts you in that position to get at least 4 to 6 wins down the line on your schedule. And suddenly, if you're able to do that, that puts light to the AP voters to say, hey, maybe Louisiana is potentially making some noise over there. We talked about it in previous episodes that Lunch Winfield has kind of been at the forefront of a lot of this national media attention, mainly because of the name that he has, but also what he's been able to produce on the field. I mean, he comes in during the Marshall game, as we remember, in the multi-overtime game. He brings them all the way back, and he's a superstar overnight. Now, some of the people that have been working in the state of Louisiana, like myself, I had seen what Lunch was able to produce in the high school ranks, but to the national stage, this was somebody that it was like, man, this guy was waiting in the wings on the bench, and now he comes in and turns it all around and gets the Cajuns back into the saddle and gets them back to bowl contention. He finished the season with 1,500 passing yards, 11 touchdowns. He ran for 667 yards and 9 touchdowns, team leading in those rushing touchdowns as well. They won 4 straight down the stretch to get in the position to reach that 8th consecutive postseason appearance. And now 2026, he's entering with even higher expectations. We've talked about it before. But because quarterbacks can change the national perception of a program quickly, if Lunch Winfield becomes one of the best quarterbacks in the Sun Belt and UL starts winning, that means the conversation then changes. And suddenly you aren't just talking about the Cajuns, you're talking about Lunch Winfield and the Cajuns. And that's when national attention can start to follow, because the media, as the way that we work, it's all based on stories. So if the national media picks it up that this guy with the name Lunch that you're talking about has deals, NIL deals with Lunchables, and is leading this group of 5 program off to a hot start, then that gets them in that position where they're able to see things, right? So on top of that, you're going to need a lot of other players around him to step up and be big. Like we talked about the ones that Phil Steele listed. You think about a Sheldon Sampson, right? He's still recovering from that hyperextended knee, and he's working to get healthy. You're going to need for him to be conditioned. Right now, you have Landon Strother that's out with a broken collarbone, but you have other guys in the receiver room, the Trenton Cheneys, the Raji Dennises, the Jacorian Norris. Like I mentioned, even though he's kind of a return specialist for you, he had some nice plays for you there in your first scrimmage. And then on the defensive side, Brent Gordon Jr., Fitzgerald West, Priest Ash, Lance Williams, Maxie Bodwin, Tito Chikire. The list goes on and on. You get the point. Connor McPherson, Jake St. Andre. You get the point of all of these guys that are going to really need to step up to go around that great play of what you can get out of Lunch that can help to elevate this team, to help them ultimately do the main thing, and that's to get wins. But again, it's not that talent is the question. It's about how are they going to execute. We know that this team has some young pieces, especially like out of the running back room. But if they're able to go out and they can execute what the coaching staff has laid out as a game plan, then they have the shot to be a quality team. So what has to ultimately happen to get the Cajuns to get those AP votes, to potentially be a program back in the top 25, like back in 2021 and then heading into the 2022 season? Let's make it really simple, right? I think it's going to be 4 things that ultimately have to happen. You have to win the games that you're supposed to, right? You can't afford to give away games. So coming out of the gate, Lamar, who is ranked also in the preseason FCS polling, you're supposed to beat them. Come out of the gate, beat them, right? You can't afford to give away any games. The opponents that Even if you're in the betting lines favored to beat them, you're supposed to beat them. You have to beat them. That's where a 6-win season becomes an 8-win season or a 9-win season, 9-3, 10-2. And then the second thing that you have to do is you have to win the Sun Belt West. Win the games you're supposed to, win your division. If you're winning your division, voters have to pay attention because now you're going to be playing in a conference championship game. A conference championship game is always on national television. So now national media has to look to see what you're doing. And then from there, you have to win a national spotlight game, right? So obviously Louisiana doesn't have games that are televised outside of their one against ULM on a Thursday night, but they face USC. And USC is ranked in the preseason top 25. In fact, they are tied for 14th with BYU. So I'm not saying that Louisiana is going to beat USC, but say you can go in to Southern Cal and in a game where I think their kickoff time is at 8 o'clock their time, 10 o'clock our time. If you're able to go in there, battle, and figure out how to win that game, the national media obviously has no choice but to say, who is this team out of Lafayette, Louisiana that just knocked off a top 15 team in the country? They have no choice but to do that. And then the last thing you have to do is to win enough games that the record becomes impossible to ignore. 6 wins, that's expected. We've seen that the past several seasons. 6 and 7 has been something that has happened 4 of the last, or 3 of the last 4 years, excuse me. That is something that's expected. 7, that's a lot better. 8, 9, now we're talking. Even 10, 11, go undefeated if you can. The higher the number, the better. Because if Louisiana is sitting at 8-2 in November, no one is going to care that the Cajuns weren't receiving votes in August. To Coach Desormeaux's point, it doesn't matter where you start at in the preseason pollings. It's more about where you finish at. The voters will have to take notice. They'll have to pay attention to what the Cajuns are producing if they're able to handle their business in those 4 facets. And that's what I keep coming back to what Coach Des said, when I asked him, about the apparent AP votes at the time, he didn't act like Louisiana had arrived. He did not pull out pom-poms and said, woo, we're back in the conversation. He said that it feels really good, but he said we're not a top 25 team right now. And that's a pretty telling statement. This is year 5 for Coach Des, and at this point in the conversation, it has to evolve. It can't just be, can Louisiana compete? Is Louisiana good enough? Could they be the next big thing in the Sun Belt? We know that they can do it. They've got the talent. Last season alone proved that your 3rd-string quarterback was able to rally the troops and get you back in position to now be playing for your 8th consecutive bowl game. They've got the talent on their roster. But once again, it's about the execution and how they can get it done. So it's now, can Louisiana consistently win at a level that demands national respect? That's the next step. Phil Steele believes that this team can win the West. The Sun Belt coaches and media have Louisiana 2nd in the West. The roster has 11 players who earned preseason recognition. Caden Jensen was a guy that also had the best tight end, I think, in the country, a Warfel award, if I'm not mistaken. Jim Thorpe Award puts Brent Gordon Jr. on the preseason watch list. The list goes on. But none of that counts once the ball is put down on September 5th. Louisiana has to prove it, and maybe that's going to be the most important storyline heading into this season. The Cajuns don't need an AP poll error to tell them that they're close. They need wins. Win the West, win the conference, beat people nationally that you can get and can be considered an upset, and get 9 to 12 wins. And now you have yourself in the conversation where then the real votes will come after Louisiana ultimately earns them. So that's going to wrap up this episode of Ragin' Rundown. Guys, if you've made it to this point in the episode, thank you so much. If you're watching us on YouTube, please do me a favor. Please like this video, share it, and leave a comment down below. But most importantly, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. If you're listening, please follow the podcast feed, rate the show, and leave us a review because it's going to help us get in front of more Ragin' Cajun fans just like yourself. I'm your guy, Jamarcus Fitzpatrick. We'll see you guys next time.